Did you know that having a trust could completely change the way your family inherits your assets without the headaches of probate court? If you're unsure what a trust is or why it's essential, you're in the right place. By the end of this video, you'll know what a trust is, how it works, and why it could be the single best tool in your estate planning toolbox. Hi, I'm estate planning attorney Mike Smith with Smith Barid LLC, and I'm one half of the Estate Planning Guide. We've helped thousands of families protect what matters most using trusts, and today I'll explain how you can do the same. Stick around because I'll explain which type of trust could save your family thousands of dollars and months of waiting in court. So first of all, let's talk about what is a trust. Most people have heard of trusts, but they have no idea how they work. So let's fix that. A trust is simply a legal arrangement where one person called a trustee manages assets on behalf of someone else called a beneficiary. You, the grantor, create the trust by transferring assets like property, money, or investments into it. The trustee then follows your specific instructions on how and when to distribute those assets. And in a typical estate planning trust, you're going to be serving as the trustee, so you're the one that makes all those decisions. So think of a trust like maybe a treasure chest or a bucket. You put your valuables inside, you lock it up, and you give specific instruction on who gets what, when, how. So a bucket, put your assets into it. As long as you're alive and you're competent, you're carrying the handle to the bucket. If you can't manage your assets anymore, the person you've named as a backup simply takes over the handle to the bucket and manages the assets in the bucket on your behalf. So why use a trust? Why do so many people rely on trust? Well, here's what makes them so powerful. The first thing is that trusts allow you to avoid probate. Assets held in a trust don't go through probate court. That saves you time, money, and privacy. I've had cases, I know of cases that have taken years to resolve in probate court, even for simple estates. I know of one case that took 7 years to resolve. I personally had a case that took 4.5 years to resolve. It was a $40,000 estate. A trust allows you to avoid all that time and money that was spent on wrapping those estates up. The second thing about a trust, I'm specifically talking about a revocable living trust, is that you can control asset distribution. So you can set conditions like when beneficiaries receive assets, for example. So you could say, when a beneficiary turns 25, they can receive X amount from the trust, or when they graduate from college, etc. You could even say things like, I've had clients say, well, I want to make sure that my kid keeps working and they don't just live off of the trust. So the child, the beneficiary, was required to bring in a W-2 every year and show the trustee that they were still working, and then they could receive a distribution from a trust. So really, you can do whatever you want in terms of conditions around the distribution of the assets. The next thing is you can protect minor children. A trust ensures that children are financially supported if something happens to you, and that there's someone in place to manage those assets for them. Make sure that they're well taken care of. The last thing is that some types of trusts allow you to reduce or avoid estate taxes entirely. Now, estate taxes don't apply to that many people at this point in time because our exemption is really high. That's great, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know when the estate tax will come back. And if you're subject to the estate tax, it's a very high tax. It's a 40% rate, blended rate. So it can be a significant hit on your estate. And so trusts are a way that we can avoid or reduce estate taxes. So let's talk about some types of trusts that you should know about. Not all trusts are the same, and choosing the wrong one could cause serious problems for your family. So first, let's talk about a revocable living trust. This is a trust that you can control while you're alive, and you can change it or cancel it while you're alive and while you're competent, so while you have your marbles. It keeps assets out of probate, but it doesn't provide any creditor protection at all. So think of a revocable living trust as a complete replacement for a will. It completely takes the place of that. It avoids probate. If you have property in multiple states, it avoids probate in multiple states. It allows you to control distributions to your kids. There can be estate tax provisions in it. Those are all the things that you can do with a revocable living trust. And it's called revocable because you can change it or revoke it anytime you want to. You keep that control. The second type of trust that I want to talk about is called an irrevocable trust. And there are different kinds of irrevocable trusts. We use them for different purposes. Sometimes they're for estate tax planning. Sometimes they're for planning for Medicaid eligibility. Sometimes they're for people who have special needs. So there are different types of irrevocable trust. The thing to know about an irrevocable trust is that you effectively can't change or cancel it after it's created. So it is basically set in stone when you set it up. Because of that, it provides maximum protection from creditors, and it can be very useful in estate tax planning situations. So sometimes we might use what's called an irrevocable life insurance trust to hold life insurance to provide liquidity to pay estate taxes. Now, the third type of trust that I want to talk about is what's called a special needs trust. And I just mentioned that a minute ago. It is an irrevocable trust. Typically, you can create revocable special needs trust, but that is not something that we typically do. A special needs trust helps care for a loved one with special needs without affecting their government benefits. So it can be either a third-party special needs trust that someone sets up for someone else. So, for example, parents could create a third-party special needs trust for a child, and it's designed to provide supplemental support for that child, but not to supplant or erase their government benefits, because they may need Medicaid to help pay for medical care. So, for example, there are people that I know who need very expensive medical care, and you don't want them to lose Medicaid because Medicaid helps to pay for that. And so a special needs trust will allow that beneficiary to have assets set aside for their care that doesn't count for Medicaid qualification purposes, so it won't affect those government benefits. The fourth type of trust is what's called a testamentary trust, and that's a trust that's created through your will, and it only goes into effect after you pass away. Now, if you want maximum flexibility, a revocable living trust might be your best bet. But if protecting assets from creditors is your top concern, then you might need an irrevocable trust. So let's talk for a minute about how do you set up a trust. So you're ready to set up the trust. Here's exactly what you need to do. The first thing is to choose the right trust type based on your family's unique needs. And you're going to arrive at that conclusion in consultation with an attorney who can talk to you about the details around these different types of trust and which one might be right for your particular set of circumstances. The second thing is you need to select a trustee. I've made videos about this in the past. That's a really important piece. You need someone that you trust to manage your assets responsibly. And I've gone into great detail on that in the past. Look for our video on selecting trustees. The third thing is you have to fund the trust. So if you create a trust but you don't put anything into it, it's not really effective at all. So funding the trust is transferring ownership of your assets into the trust bucket. So the trust is a bucket. We put the assets in the bucket, and then the trustee holds the handle to the bucket and manages the trust. The fourth thing is that I just want to reiterate this. You want to work with an experienced estate planning attorney to create a legally binding document that is effective in your state. I think it's really important that you work with somebody who knows what they're doing in this area. Mistakes can happen that can create a real problem for your family and be a devastating legacy that you left behind. So you want to invest in having an experienced estate planning attorney work with you on putting this plan together. By the way, if you're learning something new, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more estate planning tips. We put out a video or two every week, and we've got all kinds of great tips for you on estate planning that will help you to make sure you protect your family and get the right plan in place. So to recap, trusts are powerful estate planning tools that can help you avoid probate, control how assets are distributed, and even reduce your taxes. Choosing the right trust could completely change your family's future. If you want to learn more about how trust can protect your family and your home, check out our video on how to transfer a house with a mortgage into a trust. I'm Mike Smith with the Estate Planning Guys.